Right now, as you're reading this, another American factory is probably shutting down forever. 100,000 workers lost their manufacturing jobs last year alone. That's 100,000 families who don't know how they'll pay their bills next month. While politicians argue about trade deals, entire communities are being destroyed. The truth about why factories are closing will shock you, and it's not what you think. Forget what you've heard about China taking money out of America. The real story is much more serious and affects millions of American workers every single day. What's happening is called decoupling. As American and Chinese businesses are slowly separating from each other. This is creating a disaster for both countries, but American workers are paying the biggest price. For decades, American factories depended on cheap parts and materials from China. Now, these factories are scrambling to find new suppliers. The cost of finding new partners, training workers, and changing their whole system is so expensive that many factories just give up and close instead. This isn't happening overnight. It's been building for years, like a slow-motion disaster that nobody wanted to see coming. The numbers are absolutely terrifying. 13,000 manufacturing jobs disappeared in December 2024 alone. Nearly 100,000 manufacturing jobs were lost in 1 year. 30% of American companies in China are thinking about leaving. That's the highest number ever recorded. Illinois lost 350,000 factory jobs over 30 years, dropping from 927,000 jobs in 1990 to just 581,000 in 2024. These aren't just numbers on a page. Each number represents a real person who used to have a good-paying job and now doesn't know what to do. But the real horror is in the details. Take a small town in Ohio where the main factory employed 2,000 people. When that factory closed, it wasn't just 2,000 people who lost their jobs. The local grocery store started struggling because people couldn't afford to shop there anymore. The gas station on the corner had to lay off workers. The high school had to cut programs because the town couldn't afford to fund them. The restaurant where families used to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries closed down. That's how one factory closing destroys an entire community. Let me show you how this domino effect works with a simple example. When the government put taxes, called tariffs, on imported goods, one car company stopped production at their plants in Canada and Mexico. This immediately caused 5 American supplier factories to lay off their workers temporarily. One policy change put thousands of American workers out of jobs. Now, Japanese car companies are thinking about closing their American factories completely. This could cost 500,000 American jobs. The automotive industry shows us exactly how broken the system has become. When tariffs hit imported steel, the cost of making cars in America went up. But guess what? The tariffs also made it more expensive for American car companies to buy the parts they needed from overseas. So instead of helping American car makers, the tariffs hurt them. Some companies found it cheaper to close their American factories and move production to countries where they could get parts more easily. Think of a supply chain like a recipe. If you're making cookies and you can't get flour, you can't make cookies. It's the same with factories. When American companies can't get parts from China because of tariffs and trade fights, they have 2 choices: find new suppliers, which is expensive and time-consuming, or close the factory. Many companies are choosing to close because it's cheaper than fixing their supply chain problems. Companies like Krispy Kreme, Unilever, and Energizer have closed factories, not because they wanted to, but because their supply chains became too expensive to maintain. The cost of finding new suppliers combined with higher tariffs made their operations impossible to continue. When Krispy Kreme closed their factory in North Carolina, 300 people lost their jobs. When Unilever shut down their plant in Missouri, 500 families suddenly didn't know how they'd pay their mortgage. Here's something that will blow your mind. American companies are actually making record profits while they're closing factories. How is that possible? Because they're moving production to countries where labor is cheaper and regulations are weaker. They're making more money But American workers are paying the price. The shareholders get richer while the workers get laid off. It's a system that rewards companies for abandoning American workers. Here's another huge problem. The workers who built America's factories are getting old and retiring. There aren't enough skilled young workers to replace them. This isn't just about finding people to work. Modern factories need workers who can operate complex machines and work with computers. The old factory jobs are disappearing, and the new ones require completely different skills. But here's the crazy part. Even when factories try to train new workers, they can't find enough people who want to do the job. Young people today often prefer office jobs over factory work. They think factory work is dirty, dangerous, and low-paying. Sometimes they're right, but the new factory jobs actually pay really well and are much safer than the old ones. The problem is that most people don't know this. The factories that are staying open are changing all in a big way. They're using robots, artificial intelligence, and advanced machines that can do the work of many people. This creates a weird situation. American factories are becoming more efficient and making better products, but they need fewer workers to do it. So even when factories do well, they don't create as many jobs as they used to. I visited a factory in Michigan that makes car parts. 20 years ago, they employed 800 people. Today, they make twice as many parts with only 200 workers. The factory is more successful than ever, but 600 jobs disappeared. The robots don't get sick, don't take vacation, and don't ask for raises. From a business perspective, automation makes perfect sense, but from a worker's perspective, it's terrifying. Factory closures aren't happening equally across America. Some places are getting destroyed, while others are doing okay. The Rust Belt, states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, has been losing factories for decades, and it's getting worse. But the problem is spreading to southern states that thought they were safe because they had lower wages and fewer regulations. Places like Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina attracted factories by promising companies cheap labor and fewer environmental rules. It worked for a while, but now those same companies are moving to Mexico, Vietnam, and Bangladesh, where labor is even cheaper. The race to the bottom never ends, and American workers always lose. Politicians from both parties promised to bring factory jobs back to America. But here's the truth. Global supply chains have become so complicated that fixing them is extremely difficult and expensive. The Trump administration put tariffs on Chinese goods to protect American factories. But these tariffs also made it more expensive for American companies to buy the parts they needed. The Biden administration kept many of these policies, but the damage was already done. The problem with tariffs is that they're like a double-edged sword. They make foreign goods more expensive, which should help American companies, but they also make it more expensive for American companies to buy the materials they need to make their products. So while tariffs might help some American companies, they hurt others. It's like trying to help someone by cutting off their arm. Environmental rules are also causing factory closures. As pollution standards get stricter, older factories find it too expensive to upgrade their equipment. Some companies find it cheaper to close American factories and move to countries with weaker environmental rules. This creates a strange situation where American environmental policies actually cause more pollution worldwide because production moves to countries that don't care as much about the environment. A perfect example is the chemical industry. New environmental rules in America require companies to install expensive equipment to reduce pollution. Instead of spending money on this equipment, some companies just close their American factories and move production to countries where they can pollute as much as they want. So we end up with cleaner air in America, but dirtier air overall in the world. You might think factory closures don't affect you if you don't work in a factory, but you're wrong. When American factories close, we have to import more goods from other countries. This makes everything more expensive. The prices you pay for clothes, electronics, and other products go up when we can't make them here. Also, factory jobs are usually good-paying jobs that support entire communities. When a factory closes, the local restaurants, shops and services also struggle because their customers don't have money to spend. Manufacturing jobs are different from other jobs because they create what economists call a multiplier effect. For every manufacturing job, there are usually 3 or 4 other jobs created in the community. When a factory employs 1,000 people, those workers spend money at local businesses, which creates jobs for store clerks, restaurant workers, and service providers. When the factory closes, all those other jobs disappear too. The question isn't whether American manufacturing will survive, it's what it will look like in the future. The factories that are adapting and investing in new technology are becoming more competitive than ever. But they're also employing fewer people. The manufacturing jobs of the future will require different skills than the jobs of the past. Future factory workers will need to be comfortable with technology, work with automated systems, keep learning as technology changes, and be more like technicians than traditional assembly line workers. But here's what's really scary. We're not preparing American workers for these new jobs. Our schools still teach kids like they're going to work in factories from the 1950s. We're not teaching them the computer skills, technical knowledge, and problem-solving abilities they'll need to work in modern factories. It's like we're training people to drive horse-drawn carriages in the age of cars. Despite all these challenges, there are some good things happening. American manufacturers are spending lots of money on research and development. They're creating new products and processes that give them advantages over foreign competitors. Some companies are bringing production back to America, called reshoring. New factories are being built, even though they employ fewer people. Companies like Tesla, Intel, and Apple are building new factories in America, but these aren't your grandfather's factories. They're high-tech facilities that look more like laboratories than traditional manufacturing plants. I employ engineers, technicians, and skilled workers who can operate complex equipment. The pay is good, but you need special training to get these jobs. The reshoring trend is real, but it's not happening fast enough to replace all the jobs we've lost. And the jobs that are coming back are different from the ones that left. A factory that used to employ 1,000 assembly line workers might now employ 100 technicians and engineers. The jobs pay better, but there are fewer of them. To save American manufacturing, we need to invest in education and training that prepares workers for future factory jobs, not past ones. We need to create policies that support innovation while protecting workers during the transition. We need to support communities that are losing factories so they can develop new industries. We need to make sure workers have the skills they need to succeed in high-tech manufacturing. But the biggest challenge is time. The world is changing so fast that we can't afford to wait. While we're debating what to do, other countries are investing heavily in education, technology, and infrastructure. China is building new factories every day. Germany is training workers for the factories of tomorrow. South Korea is developing new technologies that will shape the future of manufacturing. The story of American factory closures isn't really about China taking money out of America. It's about a fundamental change in how manufacturing works around the world. The old way of making things, using lots of cheap labor, is being replaced by a new way based on automation, innovation, and specialized skills. American manufacturers who adapt to this new reality will succeed. Those who don't will close. The big question is whether American workers and communities will get the support they need during this transition or be left behind. We're at a crossroads. We can either accept that manufacturing is a dying industry in America and watch our communities crumble, or we can fight to build a new kind of manufacturing economy. The choice is ours, but we need to make it soon. Every day we wait, more factories close and more workers lose their jobs. Here's what the politicians won't tell you. The factories closing today represent the end of an era, but they also represent the biggest opportunity America has seen in decades. We can either build a new kind of manufacturing economy that's more efficient, innovative, and resilient than anything we've had before, or we can watch America become completely dependent on other countries for everything we need. The decisions we make right now about education, training, and industrial policy will determine whether America remains a manufacturing powerhouse or becomes a weak nation that has to beg other countries for the goods we need to survive. Millions of American jobs hang in the balance. Entire communities are counting on us to get this right. The clock is ticking, and the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just about economics, it's about national security. When we can't make the things we need in our own country, we become vulnerable. What happens if there's a war or natural disaster that cuts off our supply chains? What happens when other countries decide they don't want to sell us the goods we need? We become helpless. This isn't just about manufacturing, it's about whether America will remain strong and independent or become a nation that can't even make the things its own people need. The future of American manufacturing, and maybe America itself, depends on whether we're brave enough to face this challenge head-on. The question isn't whether change is coming, it's whether we'll be ready for it. And right now, we're running out of time. The factories are closing, the jobs are disappearing, and our communities are dying. But we still have a chance to turn this around if we act now.